Welcome to Abiding Life Studios. I'm Noah Wells. Today I have with me Chad Salyn.
Hello.
How's it going?
I'm doing well, man. Glad to be here with you today.
All right, I'm glad you're here too. We've had a couple people get a hold of us and say that they would really like to be able to walk through the unique self-test with an unbeliever. So I invited Chad to walk us through this. Chad's been working with unique self-test for how many years now?
Oh boy, probably since 2000.
Okay, yeah. So I really wanted to see if he would walk us through it and see how we can do this with an unbeliever. I really enjoy the unique self-test. It's like one of my favorite things ever that Mike Wells came up with. I think it helps. I think it helps unbelievers. I think it helps Christian families. I think it helps marriages, relationships.
Absolutely.
I think it
Yeah.
just helps you in general. I really do love the unique self-test.
Yeah.
So, Chad, before we start, can you just give us a couple minutes of just explaining your background real quick, just so people who don't know you get to know you a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've been involved with Abiding Life Ministries, probably since around 1999, 2000. And I met Noah's dad, Mike, in 2000, I think it was. Same time, 99, 2000. And so we formed Abiding Life Ministries Canada. We got official charitable status. It took a year to get it up and running, to get our nonprofit charitable status, but 2000 January of 2004. So we formed it, and initially just as a help to Mike and Betty, just to help with custom costs with materials across the border. So it was just easier for us to have bulk there, have an office, and we just shipped it out to Canadians. So, and then we did a few conferences here and there while I was pastoring full time at a church down in British Columbia here in Canada. So that's the involvement, and I was always part time with it since 2004.
Mm-hmm.
I had been working with the message a lot more closely, I guess, around 2002, and then in 2010 I went full time with Abiding Life Ministries, or 2009. I think it was 2009. Yeah, it was. It was
So it's
2000.
safe, so it's safe to say you've done the unique self-test for a while.
Yes, for I would almost 20 years, if not 20 years, I've been working with it. So it's been a very, very, very handy tool. And in fact, which I know most people who use the unique self-test, like the booklet that we're referring to, this is a little older copy. I think no
Yeah,
one
a
has
little
a
older
bit of
one.
a newer one. But I've been working with it ever since I was counseling, since I heard of it and understood it. Now, anybody who comes through my doors to sit down for a session, this is the first thing they have to do to fill out. And the reason being, again, is because it allows you to get into somebody's shoes without ever having to, ever met them or done life with them. It allows you to get into their shoes as much as you can.
Mm,
It's not Jesus, but it is sure a helpful tool
yeah.
to help to speak the language to the person who you're speaking with, and to help understand them as well. So yeah, it's been and I know anybody who's used it, it's been a very, very helpful thing.
Okay, perfect. Well, why don't you just go ahead and get into it? I'm guessing with when you're dealing with an unbeliever, you're just basically changing some words around, so you're not saying
Yeah,
made you this
yeah,
way.
yeah, and it depends, I it was Noah, for those of you listening, had just approached me with this. A couple people have been asking him about how do you take this through with somebody who doesn't believe in Jesus or doesn't have a relationship with Jesus, or even I had a phone call from somebody here in Canada, from British Columbia, the province next door to me. They called specifically because they wanted to work on their masters and maybe get their doctorate in counseling,
Mm,
but they wanted to do it in a secular setting, but they're wondering, how do I do that
mm,
in a secular setting? Like, because there's certain parameters of what you can do and what you can't do, right?
Right.
And so, and in these settings, you know, religion, God, that kind of stuff can't really come up, right? And so it was interesting when Noah asked me about the same question. I said, "Oh man, that's funny. I just, you know, about 10 days ago, I had somebody, I had a long conversation over the phone with somebody about this very thing." So we thought this is a great idea where we want to address this over the podcast here today. And again, the main issue that we're looking at is how would I bring this? How would I bring an unbeliever or somebody who doesn't believe in God, um, you know, or doesn't have a relationship with Jesus? How would you use this unique self booklet in that kind of scenario? So that's what we're going to be dealing with today, and that's what I want to talk through. And Noah asked me, you know, Chad, what do you do? And so I'm going to walk through what I do, and and now my situation's a little bit different because when people come to me, they know that I'm with Abiding Life Ministries Canada, and they know it's going to be Christian counseling.
Hmm.
Although I have many people who come who don't really have a relationship with God or don't believe, and I still use the book, and I've had nobody get offended yet. Now it's a little bit different again because I have nobody saying you can't say this and you can't say that.
Right.
So let me walk through, and then I'll kind of deal with that as I go through. So one of the first things I do when I'm meeting with someone is I'll say, listen, I would like you to walk through this book, and I'll have them read it. And now, if you're in a secular counseling company and you're not allowed to do that, what I would do is I would just say, starting on page 48, there's the instructions and then hints on how to do it. So, and then the test questions. So from 48 to page 61 is all you'd probably want to hand out to them at that point, just because I mean, there's no mention of God and that kind of stuff. And again, I want to clarify this for everybody listening. We're not trying to exclude God here. We're trying to help the person out who's under the walls of a secular company, or you know, in this case, the person who asked is in a secular counseling company. How can I use this because I can't mention God? I can't bring that up. So I would stick with pages 48 to 61, and how I would start is say, listen, I want to get into your shoes as much as I can, and this unique self test is going to allow me to do that. I want to know everybody has a temperament, everybody has a natural born given personality that's been given to them. And the first way you can realize that is if you have siblings. Are you and your siblings the same? You know, I look at me, I have two older brothers and a younger sister, and none of us are like.
Mm.
And not one of us the same. And even as little babies, as my mom would explain, we all did different things. I mean, I look at my own kids. My kids are much older now, but we had our first two kids were girls, and we had them. I think they're 2 years apart, almost 2 years apart, and they were so different as babies. You know, one was a real doer, as we would say in the unique self test. There's thinkers, feelers, and doers, and she just, even as a baby, she crawled around just ramming right through things. And my other daughter, my firstborn, Madison, she was a thinker. And she didn't just ram through. She always, you could see her plotting her way around. You know, this is here. This would be quicker to go this way. You know, that's in the way, so I'll go around this way. And you could just see it even as as babies. And so we can see that we have the word out. If you can't use the word God, I
Hmm.
would use that word. You just have a natural born given personality, unique self that you've been given. And um, and so that is terminology. Again, as we talk about in this message, definitions are very important. And so how we define something determines what I believe about something. And so the words that we use, especially for those of you in that kind of a situation where you're under certain parameters and you can't talk about, you know, God or spirituality, maybe for that matter, you can use that word natural born personality that you've been just given, you've been handed to you. So that would be the term that I've used, and I've used similar things like that. One thing that I remember Mike sharing with me a story, Noah's dad. And he was in this one place this one time, and I remember like 2 minutes before he was to get up to speak, I can't remember where he was now, but the guy who organized the whole meeting, he comes up to Mike and shares with Mike. He said, listen, you can't use the word God or Jesus or anything like that here today. And of course, Mike's like, what? You're telling me this 2 minutes before I got to get up to speak.
Yeah.
And he says, yeah, we got Hindus in the crowd. We have Buddhists in the crowd. We have Taoists in the crowd. We have Catholics in the crowd. I said, we have so many different groups here. And we don't want to offend anybody here. And so if you could just stay away from the word Jesus and God and that would be, we'd really appreciate that. Right. So I remember Mike telling me, he says, well, I said one of those prayers to God immediately and said, well, God, you got to show me the way to do this. And even as he said the prayer, those were the exact words he used. So he talked about the way. There's a way to live and there's a way not to live. There's a way to do things and there's a way not to do things. And Mike just went through the I think there's, I don't know how many different points, the 25, 26 points that Jesus goes through in the Sermon on the Mount, it's called, in Matthew chapters 5 to 7, I think it is. Okay. And most people call it the Man on the Mount now, because it's not just a sermon, it's Jesus giving all these different points. And so without using the word Jesus, Mike would just, he says, wouldn't that seem right to everybody? He'd talk through about loving your enemies, for example. And then Mike would say, wouldn't you think that's the way to do life? Like, that would be the way. And everybody's agreeing, without using that word Jesus or God. And so for those of you, in a situation where you can't really use the word God or Jesus, you're really confined to stay out of that kind of terminology or Christianese, if you will. It can be done, and Mike really proved that to me when he spoke for 45 minutes, 50 minutes on the way, and so it would be similar for you in a counseling session, just coming up with creative ways to talk about what we know God has given to us. But this person is in the place where they're ready to receive that, or you're not in a position where you can use that kind of terminology. So I would first of all just give an example of these natural born, abilities or personality that we're given. Mm-hmm. And I use my kids as an example of that. Even as babies, Madison and Paige were so different. So that's where I started. And I said, if we just look up at our natural makeup, we have a body, we have a soul, that consists of my mind, my will, and my emotions. And how do I know that? Where do I get that from? Well, I have a mind. I know because I can think, right? I have these emotions. I know that because I feel things, right? So it's not rocket science. And I have a will. I have an ability to choose to do, right? So I know that's there because I can do all those things. And I also have this spirit in me that is something that I just have this life, right? I have been given life. I've been made alive. And so, I mean, if you're not using but you can reference that in page 1 here, right? We talk about that, and I use that whether somebody believes in God or doesn't believe in God. That doesn't change, and everybody seems to widely accept that. I mean, even in the secular world, you hear. I mean, Noah, you and I were talking about earlier on in our conversation before this podcast, just that people use that word spirit all the time, right? And so you can talk about just, you have this natural God, you can't say God given, but you have this natural personality, this natural born personality, unique self that you've been given. And what I want to talk about is how much thinker you have, how much feel you have, and how much doer you have, and which one you're most dominant in. And in my thousands of hours of counseling, I've noticed that there's some are more dominant on the thinking end, there's some more dominant on the doing end, and some more dominant on the feeling end. And then, of course, I explain what that means, right? And so I go through the characteristics of a thinker, like anybody who's familiar with the unique self-test would. Thinkers, they don't like change, for example, and that's pretty much general of a thinker. They like security. Verbal acceptance is very important to them. They value truth and honesty and expect others to do the same. So I give some different, characteristics of a thinker. And then, of course, the doer. The doer is very driven. Um, he always has, he loves new goals and he loves new challenges. And go over the characters of the doer. And then the feeler, right? He's the life of the party, right? Loves to have fun, brings color to the world. Very in touch with their emotions, can verbalize his emotions very well. And so go through the different characteristics of a feeler. And then, of course, give examples of that, which I won't go into today because we're talking, most of you will be familiar with that. So I would go over that with them. And then I would have them take the test again, which is on page, if we look in the notebook, if you have one here with you, if you're listening today, which is starts on page 50. And I'd have them just walk through the questions, and I always add it up for them, of course, but that's, you're very safe to be able to walk through those questions with them. Of course, I always give them helpful hints on answering them. Right? You're going to come to some questions where sometimes yes, that would be true. Sometimes no, that would be false. So please answer what's mostly true 51% of the time. What's most true? What just tips the scale? And have them walk over that, and then go through that. And then, of course, after they're done, those of you who know how to translate the test, of course, you're going to translate that after they're done. And so that's kind of briefly and succinctly, without going, I don't want to get too wordy over the whole thing, but that's kind of what I do with somebody who doesn't have a relationship with Jesus, or who really doesn't want to hear about God, but they really want to come to see me. It's just terminology that you use. You can still use the unique self-test booklet. You probably wouldn't give them the booklet. You just give them the test part that I referred to earlier in the podcast here today, and just stay away from those words. And like Mike had to use the way. That was what he used. Instead of Jesus or God, he talked about the way. And I would also just as a disclaimer too, and I also remember having this conversation with Mike, and we're, when you're walking in the Spirit, as God has intended us to, when you're abiding, in other words, you don't differentiate between spiritual and carnal anymore. You don't really differentiate between those two things, because everything is really supernatural. Everything is of the Lord. Everything, it's what He's allowed. And for instance, we believe this point that whatever comes your way in your life had to pass through God's hands first before it ever got to you. Yeah. Right. So you stop differentiating between carnal and spiritual. I know growing up in the church, there was always, differentiating between those two things. And in some contexts, yes, that's okay. But the point that I'm making is, when you're abiding in Christ, you don't differentiate between those two things anymore. Everything is supernatural, everything of the Lord, everything that He's allowed. He still sits on His throne. Nothing happens without His hand in it. And so just as a disclaimer, for those of you who are meeting with people, I don't, at least not like I used to. Whoever walks through my doors are welcome to be there, whether they're an atheist or whether they've been going to church since they were a baby. It does not matter to me. The longer that I've walked in this message and been abiding in Christ, the less I have differentiated between carnal and spiritual. So if you're in a counseling company where you can't use those words, that is the mindset that has been helpful to me, and I hope that would be helpful to you as well. That we don't differentiate between that. I think you go through the unique self just the same, but you just use different terminology. And
Right.
and for me in my situation, I was saying to Noah earlier too, that yeah, people know that I travel around and I preach and I counsel and share this message. But also I've had atheists come through my door and come for counseling, and I never force God on anybody. But I always give them the choice. I'll let them know. I'll bring them to a point and I'll say, well, now here's where I'm going to talk about Jesus. I'm going to talk about God. You're
Mhm.
more than welcome to stay and continue on with me. Or if that's too much for you and you're not ready to hear that, you're absolutely free to go. God gave me choice, and I'm going to give you choice as well. He's never forced himself on me. And I think when you bring people, through a process, and they see how helpful it is, like the unique self test. I mean, it is very helpful. Um, you build a trust with them, and at that point, they do want to hear more. And so um, if you're in that situation where you are with a secular counseling company or whatever, I don't know if you could say, hey, can we meet up, you know, after work hours, and get together and talk. I don't know if you're allowed to do that or not, but at least in my situation, that's what I do. So I hope that would be somewhat helpful to you. But
I have a couple questions for you, if
yeah,
you don't mind.
please.
So what if I was an unbeliever and I really was feeling like I was going crazy? What unique self do you think that person might be?
Well,
Generally, would it be a over the charts thinker, over the charts doer, over the charts feeler? Do you think
well,
if you rate that high, do you think you feel a little bit more?
if you just have these thoughts, you feel like you're going crazy,
Yeah, like you're just losing it. And
going neurotic kind of thing.
yeah,
That honestly, it can be any temperament, any unique self. And let me explain that.
okay,
I will say this, though, thinkers are most predisposed to anxiety and depression,
okay,
um, simply because they get stuck in their head, right?
right.
And if they get focused on a problem or something that they really fear, and they keep processing that in their thoughts, again, like the hamster in the wheel, right? And that will create a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, and can make you feel neurotic after a while, because you're not jumping off that thought. I mean, you've been focused on it for so long,
Mm-hmm.
and then it hits your emotions, right? And now your emotions are also spiraling out along with your thoughts.
Okay,
And then it could just feel like it's consuming you, and that's when people start to feel like, I'm going crazy,
right.
right? Because you have this thought that you had. And again, I will say this, and maybe this is a topic for another time, Noah. This would be a good podcast too. But see, if you trust God, if you trust Him, like you have, like, man, you know, if you have parents who are just so trustworthy, like you never questioned anything, you always felt safe, right? Because you
Mm-hmm.
knew mom and dad were looking after it. And it's the same thing with God. If you just really know that, man, God's going to carry me through, like He has me. He's proven that over the course of my life. I'm still here. I'm still breathing. I'm still going. I have a great history with the Lord. Um, to the degree of your trust in God, will also be to the degree of pressure that you feel. So if I don't trust God, I have a lot of pressure,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because everything's on me, right? I don't have a father who's looking after it. But if I trust God, right, then I don't feel the pressure. I just
Mm-hmm.
don't feel that pressure, because I know I have a God who's looking at it. Father's going to look after it. Dad's going to look after it. And so that will help every temperament, whether you're a thinker, feeler, or doer, because you want to build for them, that they can trust God. See, and there's the rub with somebody who's in a secular situation, like a secular counseling company, like one of these people are who asked this question, is you just don't have the freedom to say that. Um, but like I do with the atheist, I just say, well, you tired of your own way yet?
Right.
Right? Because you're anxious, you're stressed, you have anxiety, you want to kill yourself. So how about we try a different way? So anyway, sorry, let me get back to the next question. That was just a side note, but if you do have a trust in God, you won't feel that neuroticness. You won't feel that craziness. Now for the doer, right, he can get stuck. He wants to get things done. And he loves a new challenge. And if he doesn't have a new goal or a new challenge, that doer can get depressed and he can get stuck on that. And that will drive the doer crazy because he loves to have a new challenge. He loves to have a new goal. He loves to get things done, right? And if a doer's sitting around not getting things done, that can have the same effect. Now, it'll be different than a thinker because thinker really gets stuck in his thought. A doer, if he has nothing to do, he will go crazy, right? And for a feeler, it's for them, it's when their emotions really start to spiral out. So they've been believing a lie. They feel there's no way out. They're not having fun anymore. Feelers love to socialize, like to be the life of the party. They like to have people who are happy around them. And if they can't be social anymore, and it's nothing but stressful things, and it really stirs their emotions, because feelers will take on the emotions of the other person too,
right? Yeah,
not just their own, right?
Yeah.
And so if that continues in a process like that, that is what will drive a feeler crazy and make them feel like they're going nuts.
Yeah, so if a feeler had a dysfunctional family, then they're going to wear that a lot, correct?
Absolutely. And might even blame themselves when it didn't have anything to do with them.
Right.
Right. Depending on how much feeler you have, but definitely a high feeler, or if they're on the chart, right? Like, so if we look at the back here again, the very back page of the unique self-test booklet. So if you see the feeler here, if you're between 30 and 32, you're a compulsive feeler. Right.
Oh, okay.
So if you're between 16 and 24, I call that just normal feeler.
Okay.
Between 24 to 30, I call you a high feeler, and then 30 to 32 is what I call a compulsive feeler.
Oh, okay.
The more, if you're in that 30 to 32 range, yeah, you definitely can have the potential to feel like you can be going crazy. You're just neurotic, like things are out of control. So if that's not under the influence of the Holy Spirit.
Right. So I don't know if you can do this quickly or not. Maybe you don't need to either. I just had this thought of, so if someone is a high thinker, can you give us like some points you can help that person out? Like, my daughter's a high thinker. I have her write stuff down. That helps her a lot.
Yes.
So can you give us maybe 2 or 3 points that would help a thinker, a doer, and a feeler if they're, not obsessive, but maybe that high of a thinker, feeler, or doer?
Yeah. What's the truth that really brings them down, levels them out?
Maybe could actually help, because we're in the business of helping people.
Yes.
So even if they're unbelievers, do you have any good points to help that thinker that's an unbeliever that isn't trusting in God? Even though I understand that we do get the best help from God.
Yes.
But they're not at that point yet. So do you have any points you can help?
Yeah. So for the thinker, so just practically speaking, not spiritualizing this.
Nope, no spiritual. Yeah.
So what really refreshes or renews the thinker is they need time out or time alone.
Okay.
One of those two things. That is what really renews a thinker, because with thinkers, especially if a thinker is around a feeler can exhaust a thinker, right? Just exhaust them, because if you're a thinker with low feeler, you have low emotional energy. And so if you're around feelers all day, that person will just exhaust you. And thinkers generally have 1 to 3 close friends.
Okay.
Right? Where feelers will have a whole bunch of friends.
Right.
Right? Thinkers are they're loyal. Thinkers are very loyal people. Very loyal. And so if a thinker's like, when they're about to approach something, or they're about to do something, or they're working on a project, because for a thinker, right, task equals identity to them.
Okay.
Right? So the task that they're doing, that that is so closely associated with their identity.
Okay.
Thinkers hate not to do a perfect job at something.
Mm.
If you gave a thinker, here, I need you to do this and I need it done in 10 minutes, that will drive, if that thinker doesn't have much doer in them, that'll just depress them. Because no, they want to look into it. I want to research this. What's the best way to do this? Because thinkers don't like to do a job even 9 out of 10.
Right.
Oh, I did 90%. Okay. They want 100% because they're perfectionists, right? So if they can't approach and do something to the best of their ability, that'll just depress the thinker.
So does a high thinker, do they accept, no, I don't know about the word, do they expect perfection out of other people?
Oh, yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Thinkers hate to work with people who, what would be the right word?
Because feelers are kind of just out there and do whatever.
They don't have the same ability as them. They hate to work with people who just don't do it right according to them. Right?
Yeah, so they can be very critical, is what you're saying.
Yes. They want to work with people who they feel will do about as good a job as they will.
Okay.
Right. And so thinkers have a hard time working with feelers who don't have a lot of thinker in there.
Okay.
Or a doer who doesn't have a lot of thinker, because a doer, he may not be about getting it 100% done. He's about getting it done. Yeah. And a doer would be okay. 70%, that's pretty good. Right. Where that'll drive a thinker nuts. Right. That's why most great leaders we read about in our history books, great presidents, prime ministers, etc. Doers are leaders. They're natural born leaders.
Right.
But all of them had a thinker as a second in command person. Because that thinker helped that doer see all the cracks, and then that thinker will slow him down. Whoa, if you go do this, this, and this, and this, then this, and this is going to happen. Yeah. Right. And so that doer really needs that thinker as a second in command person. So a thinker wants to work with competent people. That's the word I was looking for. Okay. If a thinker has to work with incompetent people, it drives a thinker absolutely nuts. Right. He needs to work with competent people. And so I guess that could actually answer your other questions. What will drive a thinker crazy? That can be one of them. Because they're perfectionistic, they want to do things well. If you have a thinker with low doer, you can't give them too many tasks at a time because it just overwhelms them. Okay. Right? Because they want to do a good job. Right? That's why if you're married to a doer, and if you're married to a doer and you're a thinker, he'll have a whole bunch of projects started around the house, but a lot of them won't be completed because a doer gets bored after a while. I'm on to the next challenge, right? He needs that thinker to help him get it done, to finish off that job, right? And so again, speaks to the truth that we really are a body and we need each other, right? The head can't say to the foot, I don't need you, right? We really do need each other, and we complement each other. But to get back to it again, to a thinker, what will really level a thinker out if they're kind of going crazy is they need time out. Okay. Time out. They need time out or time alone, because people will exhaust them. Okay. So that will renew the thinker. Now for the doer, it's different. What renews a doer is a new challenge or a new goal. Okay. Right? Because doers love to accomplish things. They love to get things done, right? Another notch on the belt, that's done. You can give a doer a list of, say you're at a job and you're the boss, and one of your employees he's a high doer. And you can give him a list of 20 things. Here, go get them done, right? And you leave them, because doers don't like to be handcuffed. If you're going to put all these parameters around him, you're going to just drive the doer nuts. But if you let him go, right, he'll get it done. Now, he may not get it done well. You might want a thinker to check up on him once in a while, but he loves it. Oh yeah, that's done. Great. Check mark that. Oh, dude, man, I'm already at 10 things done already today. Right? You will keep that doer for life if you can keep doing that. but he needs a new challenge. That's what renews a doer. He needs a new challenge and a new goal. If he gets stuck on these jobs that he can't push ahead anymore, um, um, what will renew him is a new challenge, a new goal. Because if a doer isn't getting things done, it depresses a doer.
Okay, that's what I was
Right?
going to ask. Do they get depression?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. They'll get down if they feel like they're not accomplishing anything.
Mm-hmm.
They will get down and depressed. So you give a doer a new challenge, a new goal,
Yeah.
right? And that will motivate them again. So again, we're just to remind everybody listening, we're just talking practical speaking, not spiritualizing anything.
Of course.
For people in those scenarios. And then for the feeler, what renews a feeler? If their emotions are running high and they feel like they're going crazy, what will level out the feeler is social interaction.
Mm.
Right? What will depress that feeler if they close themselves off in the room, shut themselves out from people, because feelers need people around, right? They are re-energized, renewed through social interaction. The worst thing you could do if you have a feeler working for you is to put them in a cubicle downstairs of the warehouse basement in a corner all on their own.
Right.
You're just going to depress because they love to be around people.
Yeah.
Right? They're social butterflies, as the saying goes. And so that on a practical level, that's what a feeler needs, is social interaction. So thinker, time out or time alone.
Okay.
Right? That's what they need. The doer, it's a new challenge or a new goal.
Mm-hmm.
And for the feeler, it's social interaction.
So
right?
with the feeler, would you tell them, hey, just step out, take a walk where there's people, go to a park, go to a mall, go somewhere where there's people?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Right. Get together with your best friend, and if not that, grab another friend and talk through your problem with them. They'll just feel better.
Yeah.
And to have positive encouragement from a friend, not negative rejection.
Okay.
Right. They need somebody to come along. And if it's something they need to hear, right, that they might not like, if for a feeler, it's how you word it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If somebody's just blunt and to the point with no emotion to a feeler, that just depresses the feeler. So say the doer just plows through, and the thinker's like, get over it, what's your problem, this isn't a big deal, you're too emotional. Right. That will just depress. They need somebody to come alongside them and really empathize with them or sympathize with them. And be gentle with them.
Okay.
And that it will really help a feeler out. So does that answer your question, Noah? That's a great question you asked.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I was always wondering if there was something else. It seems like there's a lot of thinkers out there. I feel like I meet more thinkers than
There is, and
anybody
actually,
else, and I don't know why that is, but um, writing stuff down always helped my daughter when
yes,
she gets
I
so stuck here.
yes, it's
Then
a
I can get her to write it out. It helps.
yeah. My wife, she's multifaceted,
Mm-hmm.
but she in her multifaceted again. So for anybody listening in, multifaceted. Again, it's when if you're a pure multifaceted, you're 16 all the way across all three. Now, a multifaceted could be between 16 and 20, but a pure multifaceted is 16 all the way across. And my wife
Is that with every situation too?
yeah, like
Or
that's
is that
social
just in the
environment.
social?
Yeah, so social
Okay.
environment. So your normal environment. Um, Almost we should just put normal environment, because I use that word because it helps people understand just your normal environment that you're in. So if you're that way all the way across. So my wife is 18 on the thinker, and then 16 feeler, 16 doer.
Okay.
And so for her, I guess I should mention this on a practical level. What renews or levels out that temperament? It's sleep, rest.
Mm.
Multifaceted people love sleep
Okay.
because they have such low emotional energy
Mm-hmm.
physically, and they're usually around people, whether at their work or whatever. People just exhaust them. So my wife loves sleep. When she gets to nap in the afternoon, oh, she's so happy. And I've
Okay.
learned to say, please go take a nap.
So if you see
Absolutely.
someone who has that unique self, you just say, "Hey, go take a nap.
Go take a
I got
nap.
it taken care of."
Yeah. I remember when I was in I think I was in Denmark. I was there for a couple of weeks in Copenhagen, and doing a few abiding life seminars, conferences there, and counseling, of course. And I remember this one girl came in to see me, and of course, she filled out one of these for me before she came, as I normally do. And so she comes in, and I just looked at her, and the first words out of my mouth, I said, "Mandy, you love sleep, don't you?"
Mm.
And she looked at me with this wide eye. She goes, "You don't even know me. How do you know that?"
Yeah.
And I started laughing. It was quite humorous. And I said, "Well," I said, "I've been working with your temperament. I live with one, so
Yeah.
I know you really well. You can't get away with much here today." And so she started laughing, but she goes, "Yeah, I'm always." I said, "Yeah, well, you do that because that's what renews you.
I
That's what
use you.
regenerates
That's
you."
cool.
Yeah,
Before we end this, I think we got a little bit more time. I would
perfect.
like you to go maybe a little bit more into the body, soul, and spirit, how we could maybe explain that a little bit more to an unbeliever. I guess my only question is really, and,
No, that's good. I definitely
and
can do that.
yeah, let me just ask this question and you tell me if I'm completely wrong or, so what my question is the spirit or soul, is that what knows what's right and wrong within you?
Well, the true gauge of right or wrong is we need to filter so everything through the spirit.
Okay,
Um,
so spirit knows what's right and wrong.
yes,
So is
yes,
that
and
how
that
you could explain that to an unbeliever?
well, see that's where that can get a little tricky.
Right, that's what I
Um,
was trying to figure out if you
yeah,
could actually do that.
because of the terminology, because the spirit, because we're saying you want to filter your soul, and when we say soul, we mean your mind, your will, and your emotions, your ability to
Hmm.
think, feel, and do things, choose to do
Yeah.
things. You want to filter that through the spirit, because without filtering your personality, your unique self through the
Hmm.
spirit, that can mean freedom or bondage. That can mean life or death. For example, I can give this guy a hammer to build a home, or it could
Hmm.
use the same hammer to kill someone.
Right.
Right? It depends on how he's using his temperament, right? And so we're
Yes.
saying it needs to be filtered through the spirit.
Hmm.
Um, so, for example, a thinker who isn't filtering his unique self through the spirit, you know, he can become very judgmental, very
Hmm.
self-righteous.
Okay.
Right? That's what will happen to that temperament, not under the influence of the spirit.
Okay.
A doer, he can become very obnoxious,
Hmm.
right? And very trite. Lack of emotion, belligerent would be another good word. A feeler, who's not filtering through the spirit, just becomes an emotional wreck. Just to
Hmm.
sum it up,
Okay.
their emotions are spiraling out. They have no peace. Um, there's no filter. They just make reckless decisions, choices. Because they're going off their emotions. So the goal is to filter our unique self through the spirit.
Hmm.
That would be the goal. And how we could explain that. So that's actually a good question, Noah, because I do walk through this. I just kind of briefly mentioned it because I wanted to make sure we had time to go through the process that I go through with somebody who doesn't believe in God. But I explain now our body has physical needs.
Hmm.
And so I'll have the body, soul, and spirit diagram. Of course, it's on page 1 in the booklet.
Yeah.
And so I'll be looking at this with them, and I'll say, now your body has physical needs, doesn't it?
Hmm.
And we learn those in grade school, in kindergarten, grade 1.
Right.
And we learn that our physical body has needs of liquid. Yeah, perfect. No, liquid,
Hmm.
clothes, shelter, and food. Right. We learn that at a very early age. And so the, what we also have is a physical world that we live in, and the physical world meets the needs of our physical body. So I need food for my physical body. The physical world provides that for my physical body, etc. Right? The physical world provides liquid, water, because I need that for my body.
Hmm.
I said, and your soul also has needs that need to be met as well. So in your mind, you have to have a need to think. And so we meet those needs in all kinds of ways, right? We read books, we go get an education, we go online, we do research. We meet our needs of our will in all kinds of ways. And our will is our chooser, right? As people will say, it's your ability to choose to do. And so we're making choices all the time. Am I going to wear this black hoodie or my red hoodie? Am I going to turn left at this light or turn right at this light? So we're exercising our will, as they say. We have a need to be able to choose.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why people who feel they have no choice, they start to go crazy, right? Look at those who were in solitary confinement, they go nuts, right? They absolutely went crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you have no control, right? You're not exercising your will. And then, of course, your emotions. How do we meet those needs? Well, we meet them in all kinds of ways. People will dress up, right? Look real nice. Somebody will
Mm-hmm.
say, "Wow, do you ever look good today?" Or even whistle at you, and oh, well, emotionally, that just makes me feel good, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're meeting those. So the body has needs, the soul, the mind, will, and emotions has needs. I say, but what are the needs of the spirit? And I said, how do we know those? Physical can meet physical,
Mm.
but only spirit can meet spiritual,
Right.
right? And this is where it might get a little um, difficult for those in a secular situation, because this is where I refer to in scripture where it says God is spirit, and in the book of John, God is spirit,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if physical meets physical, then spirit meets spiritual. And what
Right.
are our spiritual needs? I said, and I can sum them up in 4 words: love, purpose, security, and significance. Now, you could add other words to that, like value, worth, acceptance, belong, affirmation.
Mm-hmm.
But all those words are summed up in those first 4 words: love, purpose, security, and significance. And if you're explaining this to an unchurched person, a person who doesn't believe in God, has no relationship with Jesus, you have no problem going there with them at all. And I've never had an issue with that. And that makes sense. They said, well, how do you know those are spiritual needs? I said, well, you can't get away from them, can you? He says, what do you mean? I said, well, do you like to be unloved or do you like to be loved?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I like to be loved. I said, do you like to feel insecure or do you like to feel secure?
Mm-hmm.
Well, secure. I said, so it's not rocket science, right? You're just naturally born with that.
Right.
You have this somehow. It's just birthed in you,
Yeah.
right? And so, do you like to have no purpose or do you like to have purpose? Do you like to feel significant or insignificant? I said, so it's not rocket science. You're born with those things,
Yeah.
and so that's kind of how I walk through the body, soul, and spirit.
Okay.
Um, and that's actually part of my first session with people, even along with unique self, because I'll say, you know, um, we have to have those needs met. And where are you looking to, or who are you looking to get those needs met? Because you have to have them met,
Yeah.
right? And especially people in a marriage, I know you're having marriage issues because you're looking to your mate, and your mate's looking to you,
Yeah.
right, to get their needs met for love, purpose, security, and significance.
Yeah.
So I kind of talk about that in my first session, and then normally, of course, different scenarios call for different things at times, but
Of course.
um, but then of course, yeah. So that's how I walk through the body, soul, and spirit. If that answers your question.
No, it does. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
do you have
good.
anything to add, or do you want to sum it
Yeah.
up?
No, I think at the end of the day, and I appreciate the question, simply because it's funny enough. When Noah had called me and asked me to do a podcast on this, I told him, man, I just got a call about that. Somebody else asking me too, because they want to work on their masters and perhaps get their doctorate in counseling, and they really felt called to do this in a secular setting, counseling in a secular company, and how do I do that? What would that look like? And I said, you know, if God can be creative with Mike, 2 minutes before he had to get up and speak and can't use the words God, Jesus, or anything like that, I know that God will give you the words, and I hope I give you some practical things. But I want you to remember, at the end of the day, faith is really important, and you can trust God for the moment. And
Mm-hmm.
I really believe with all of my heart that God will give you what you need to say in your setting, especially if you're in that secular counseling company setting, or anyone. If you're in a place where you can't use the words God or Jesus or speak about it, I really believe that God will give you the words to use in those kind of settings to speak truth, because
Yeah.
we can speak truth in all kinds of ways. We don't have to just use the Bible. Man, I've ministered to people just by simply giving them a hug or putting my arm around them.
Mm-hmm.
That I've had people come, I remember I was at this one retreat there last summer, and it was this lady, and I just came up, put my arm around her, and just said how much I appreciated her, and so glad you're here. And at the end of the conference, she goes, "You have no clue how much that meant to me."
Mm-hmm.
And I even forgot about it, but after she talked, I said, "Oh yeah, I do remember that now." She goes, I'm a widow, widower, however you say that,
Mm-hmm.
and my husband passed away a couple of years ago, and I haven't had anybody just touch me in a long time. So that arm you put around my shoulder meant so much,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know that, but God knew that, you
Yeah.
know. So faith is important. And remember, as Jesus says, without faith, it's impossible to please God.
Mm.
And it also says the righteous will live by faith. So you need to have faith that God will give you what you need to say, and what you need to have in any given moment. We abide moment by moment, and I know that God will give you what you need in that moment, in that setting. Um, so just as a disclaimer, I guess, but I hope I've given you some practical things to be able to use and share if you're in that kind of situation. I hope that's helpful for you.
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, I think we can talk to unbelievers, and it's not our job to bring them to Christ. It's the Holy Spirit's.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
that's what's nice
Yeah.
about it is the
Yeah.
Holy Spirit is the one that goes at them and, you know, helps them bring them to God. So it really takes the pressure off. You're just
Yeah.
trying to get them to the point of explaining who they are.
Yeah. The pressure's off of us. It's not on us. I mean, again, in the book of John, Jesus says, if you lift me up, I draw men to myself.
Mm,
So you bring up a good point, Noah. I hope that anybody who's in that setting, I mean, yes, of course, you know that they need God, and you would desire that, but we can do that in all kinds of different ways. I think Christians over the years have maybe got a little uncreative, but there's creative ways to share truth and share love
mm,
without having to use scripture references, or using certain Christian terminology,
yeah,
Christian words, you know. But God will draw people to Himself. That's His job, and so the pressure's off of you with that.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, which is cool. And so to end it, anyone who needs to get a unique self test, just go to abidinglife.com. Or Chad, can they order them from your website?
Absolutely. Yep. You just go to www.abidinglifecanada.com. Just add the word Canada at the end.
Easy as that. So
Yeah.
they're $10. You can take one online too. It's $10. Um, yeah, and like Chad said, Chad, what page they can take out? I mean, if you're gonna
Yeah. If you're
if you're
walking,
gonna go speak to an unbeliever, what page do you go to? Just
yeah, I 48 through to 61. It's the very back of the book.
you
Yeah.
have to rip out the back part,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
the front part,
Yeah.
and
And if
give it to them.
anybody, if you're in that situation, we do have a PDF of just that part. We'd be more than happy to send that to you right now. And
Yep.
you can use that in that situation too, if you're in that situation and you can't
Yeah, because
see
we're
the
in the
word
job of
God
helping
or
people, so
Jesus.
whatever
Yeah,
will help.
absolutely.
All right, thank you, Chad, so much for explaining a lot of that.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've really enjoyed my time here today. It's good for me to go over this stuff too. It's always
Yeah,
good reminders.
yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for listening, and we will do another one soon. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.